Locked and loaded, ladies and gentlemen, off to the races for another episode for the archives of Everything Combat, because life is a fight. Riding shotgun always is UFC Hall of Famer, Eater of Worlds, Slayer of Dragons, Pat Miletich. How are we doing today, champ?
I'm doing great. We've got the guest that makes me in a good mood, so I'm ready to rock and roll, buddy.
Well, he is definitely the man of the hour. He's the man with the power. He is the hit maker, the record breaker. He will make your back crack and your liver quiver, and if you don't dig this mess, then you are at the wrong address, ladies and gentlemen. Two-time NCAA champion, former Bellator middleweight champion, and former One Fighting Championship champion. My good welterweight champion, I apologize. He is joining us today. Man, some fresh news coming off the news that he will be fighting Ruthless, Robbie Lawler, coming up very, very soon.
It's kind of sad I'm fighting Pat's, one of Pat's proteges.
Yeah.
And one of the few people I didn't have anything bad to say about in the welterweight division. But sometimes that's how you got to roll. Obviously, it's a tough fight. A good fight, and someone I'm excited to get in there with.
And that was the voice of Mr. Ben Askren, ladies and gentlemen. How are you doing today, Ben? I'm assuming you're going to be a little busy with some interview requests because, like we said, that news on the fight was just announced yesterday.
Yeah, but right now I'm good. I was genuinely retired. Obviously, I said with stipulations I would come back out of my retirement. And right now I had my life set up so it was moving in a direction I wanted to. And then when I got the news that I got traded, I kind of had to flip everything around. So this is like the first week where I've had kind of everything set up the way I want to get it set up. I got my training perfect. I got everything ready to go. So actually this week I'm feeling really good.
Yeah, it was very interesting.
That's good. And, I just want to add with, all the Twitter that was going on between you and a lot of the other UFC fighters. Some of them remained silent, but it was comical, dude. It was some seriously funny stuff. The way guys would chime in and you'd shut them down right away. And I was by myself reading all these tweets going out and laughing my ass off. But something that I should have expected, to be honest with you, and didn't expect. I figured, maybe because. We're looking at a 155-pounder who's now the champion, who's not that marketable in America. Maybe by chance, because he beat the money man, that they were bringing in Askren to kind of shut that train down and change directions. But that's not the case. They announced you and Lawler, and that's the one guy I think that is a tough matchup for anybody. He really is. He's been difficult for guys to hold down, and he gets up and is able to do some damage, whether he wins or loses. Guys are getting hurt in fights with him. So it's something I didn't expect. I mean, did you foresee this?
One of the only guys that really said anything back to me on Twitter was Darren Till, and he's number 2. And I figured I'm going to go as high as I can go on the chart there. And and they didn't want to give me Darren Till, unfortunately. And so 3 and 6 were booked. They're booking Colby versus Tyron. So really that only left Thompson or Lawler were the only real possibilities at that point. So I figured it was going to be one of those two. They picked Lawler. I think they have a good idea that he's going to be one of the tougher matchups for me in that division. And obviously Dana's not going to mind seeing me lose. That's and I don't blame him for it. I've been a pain in his ass. That's fine. No big deal there.
Well, in the way we've seen Dana's track record in the past, maybe he's thinking in his mind, which, I mean, you're not at the age where you're past your prime at all, but he did it, he tried to pull it off against Fedor. He knew Fedor was past his prime when he was trying to get him in the UFC, to get him beat, to make the UFC stock go up. Yep. He did it with Prokop. He's done it with other athletes. To bring him over from Pride when they bought Pride. He did that to build that UFC stock up, make the UFC look better than technically, it was, because Pride in its prime had absolute monsters. And so it was kind of, in my mind, even though I fought in the UFC and was a UFC champ, really that was a totally different league of fighting, the way those guys were fighting over there. So I should have guessed that he would try and do the same thing to you.
Yeah, and I knew that. I mean, I knew that. I knew it wasn't like they were gonna try to push me to the title. And even besides the business aspect of it, trying to make UFC look good, Dana holds grudges. That's no surprise to anybody whatsoever. And so, yeah, I mean, I expected this. I was hoping for a Till or someone who I didn't like, who I wanted to beat up. That's kind of who I was hoping for. But again,
Right.
you know, it's I grew up wrestling my whole life. You freaking get thrown in the bracket, whoever you draw, and you fight them, and that's all that happens.
Right.
And you've had such an interesting relationship with the UFC. I mean, going back to, however it was a few years ago when you were asking to be released from Bellator, got your release from Bellator with the thinking that the UFC was kind of trying to court you a little bit or had their eyes on you. Come to find out that wasn't the case. Then you're like, WTF. Then you find out they do want you. But then it's like one of the conditions when you have to fight in World Series of Fighting first. So you've had an interesting kind of, little dance here with the UFC.
Yeah, absolutely. And, yeah, it was very convoluted. And, I ended up in one championship, and that was an awesome experience for me, man. I learned so much. I got to travel the world. Their ownership and their management is really fantastic, and they're doing great things. So that was a really good 4 years of my life. I mean, obviously, the one thing I didn't get to do is fight someone who is ranked higher than me, which is I always wanted that challenge, and now I'm gonna get to go do that. And so, so everything worked out for the best.
Absolutely.
So now, where will your camp for this fight take place? I mean, have you put together your own thing? Do you still go over and work with the guys at Duke Rufus's at all? I mean, what are you doing for this?
I'm gonna bring everyone to me.
Yeah.
I kind of am at the point in my life where I want to be on my own schedule. Right now, I live 3 minutes from my wrestling academy, and I have the capabilities to bring everyone to me. So, actually, who lives right by me? That's funny that someone just brought up like a month ago, and I'm like, you know what? I should see what he has to offer. And we only worked out once, but it was great. Mark Lehman.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, old school guy. I've coached a lot of really high level mixed martial artists, so I'm worked with him once, and he'll be part of my camp. I'm going to work with Duke Rufus, Gerald Mearshart, who fights in the UFC. And then I have a young kid named Jordan Newman, who he wrestled for me when he was in high school here at Askren Wrestling Academy. He was a 2-time national champion at University of Wisconsin Whitewater, and he kind of worked for us in the summers doing camps and stuff. And now he's starting his own fighting career. He actually signed with Bellator. So I'm doing some work with him too, and he's actually coaching at my academy. So I got a really good setup. I'm really, really happy with it. And honestly, at 34, and I think this is something a lot of the old guys that they don't learn is like, you can't bang when you're 34 like you could when you were 22. Your body's just not the same. And so that's the other reason I don't want to be in that team environment. I want to do things the way I want to do things, the way that I know is going to benefit me the most, and not really have to worry about anything else. And I'm grateful that I'm in a situation where I can do so, but it really helps me.
Without a doubt. I mean, and with the wrestling camps and all of that going on, lucrative, obviously, especially with your name and your background. So it's not like you necessarily have to fight. So I see it's the challenge of another belt that's bringing you back in.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, and the other thing, I've made really good money in one championship, and I set myself up.
Right.
I mean, Chael said, I don't know. Chael probably stole the same. Somebody says, not how much you make, it's how much you keep. And I was never very flashy or wasteful with my money. I made some really good investments. And so, I was in it, like I said, when I retired from one championship, I was in a situation where I was going to get to do what I loved the rest of my life, which is coach wrestling, travel and coach wrestling a little bit. And then I do some stuff with RUTHLESS where I do a podcast and I get to talk about wrestling. So I talk about wrestling, I coach wrestling, I travel and I coach wrestling. That's everything I want. That's everything I want in life. So I was in a really good spot, and so for me, this comeback is about it's challenging me. I always thought I could beat these guys in a fight, and so now I get to try to go prove it.
Something you had said about, and I've really found it kind of poignant, and it's so true, man. I mean, even your most elite martial artists, as they grow, in your classes where you're rolling, sometimes you're rolling with white belts and black belts, but as you ascend in the world of wrestling, from college or from high school to college and then on, to the World Games, Pan Am, Olympics, you're literally in the room with, 30, 40 other killers on that level. So it forces you to perform on an elite level, whereas other martial arts aren't necessarily pressing you on that elite level all the time. Speak to that if you don't mind, because I thought that was really a really good point.
Sure. And you know, even nowadays it's different because there's a whole bunch of academies kind of similar to mine. And what you're seeing now is kids, because they're getting elite level coaching from a younger age, kids are reaching elite levels younger. You know, we just saw Kyle Snyder, the youngest ever world champion at age 19. We see Spencer Lee come in as a true freshman and dominate the NCAA tournament. So we're having more of these younger guys do better. And it's because they have these elite academies where elite kids are training with each other. And, you know, the other thing I think about is interesting about wrestling, and you could say this about mixed martial arts also, which a lot of other martial arts don't have, is there's so much competition in wrestling. You kind of get to cut out the bullshit. And so you get down real fast. It's not like, oh, this is my special trick, this works. Like, people are competing all the time, and if their special trick doesn't really work, you know it's bullshit. And so you get right down to what works and what doesn't work, and who's good and who's not good. And you cut out a lot of the garbage that that lives in other martial arts. And so wrestling is kind of, you get that real natural feel for what's right and what's wrong, and it makes kids really strong and technically proficient from a young age.
Yeah, I mean, because wrestling, you know, having grown up wrestling also since I was 5-6 years old, I mean, it's basically a street fight every day in a wrestling room without the punches. I mean, you are getting your ass kicked until you get good enough to kick anybody else's ass, and you don't get that when you're hitting a heavy bag and doing a lot of other stuff, working on your kickboxing, kicking pads. You know, every once in a while, hard sparring, yeah, somebody's going to knock the shit out of you. But wrestling's every day. It doesn't matter. You're getting thrown on your head.
Yeah, and you know, Pat, I mean, if you went into a jiu-jitsu room and tried to bring the same type of intensity that happens in any Division I college room in America, everyone's going to look at you sideways and they're going to try to kick you out. They're like, it's just not, it's that type of intensity that is not accepted other places.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons wrestlers do so well under stressful conditions, is because that's just what you're used to. You just come in and you fight every day and you bring the heat, and you know, you get a lot tougher.
I think that's such a good point, man. That's such a good point. I never really thought about it like that. But what a big part of, you know, what you're into was really cool too. I mean, you have a really cool psychology.
Hey, can I cut back in there one time?
No, go for it, brother.
Yeah, so when I was coaching wrestling at Rufus, I kept trying to explain to them that I needed the intensity to be raised during the wrestling practice. And this is, you know, really high level UFC mixed martial artists. And so I kept trying to explain that, and they wouldn't get it, you know? And I'm like, shit, how do I get that? And so I said, one day, I said, guys, we're not practicing. We're going to go to the University of Madison and watch the Badgers practice.
There you go.
So we went in there and practiced, and there were guys just going balls to the wall. There was guys cussing at each other, getting ready to fight because the intensity was so high. And finally, after that practice, a few of the guys were like, "Oh, I get it now. I see what you mean," you know. And that was just what I was used to. That's what I grew up in. But they just hadn't seen that level of intensity brought on a regular basis.
Could that same thing be said about sparring? Because you see a lot of gyms now take sparring kind of, I mean, going that hard before a fight. Is sparring kind of a component of that? And how much does this going so hard before a fight in the red, running the injuries in the red, run the risk of injury?
Well, I would say to what you're saying is, I would say that, yeah, I mean, it's hard to spar that much because of the inherent dangers of it. And that's why wrestling, especially at a college level, these guys are so good. They don't hurt each other too much. I mean, the point of wrestling is not to hurt someone, it's to pin someone. So there's not that many injuries. But I guess the point I think Pat and I were both making is that level of intensity obviously can benefit you a lot in combat. And that's just something wrestlers, they just grow up with it. They're so used to it. And so it's so natural. And they can turn it up another level where a lot of other people can't. I think that's
they're used to the scrambles from a young age. They're used to, I mean, you're even wrestling in a crowded wrestling room, you're even wary of other groups landing on your legs and being able to jump out of the way and stuff like that while you're dealing with an animal that's trying to take you down in front of you. So it's your senses are a little better.
Very fascinating. Into situational awareness. And another thing I was going to say, your sports psychology, how you utilize sports psychology, you kind of have a different bit of a philosophy via kind of your sports psychology. But another thing I found fascinating, you don't want to overthink like your fight plan, like leading up, hours before a fight in the locker room. You want to hang out, chill, be loose with your boys or your friends, and not overthink it, because you had said overthinking it kind of makes you hesitate, et cetera, as opposed to just being muscle memory. Reflex.
Yeah. Well, you can't. I mean, by the time you're 2 hours before a fight, if you haven't figured your shit out by then, it's too late.
Right.
It's too late. There's nothing you can do. You can't make technical provisions an hour or two before a fight. I mean, that's something you need to practice for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. And so, these people who just stress, it's like, I mean, they've proven through scientific studies how many times that all night cramming before a test does you no good. It's actually counterproductive. And so it's kind of the same thing, but a lot of people, whether they don't realize it and they do it, it's negative, or whether they even do realize it and they still have no ability to control their own emotions and their nerves get to them and they're obsessing, it's just really negative. Either way you split it.
Very interesting.
Yeah. So I asked Dan Gable this last week when we had him on. Ben,
I saw that. That's really cool.
Did you get a chance to listen to it at all?
I listened to a little bit, and then what else? Dan was also on Chael's show. I was kind of thrown off by seeing Dan do all these interviews, getting himself back out there.
Yeah, he's doing that, doing the art stuff. They're for I believe the artwork is for charity, and so that's a big push for him. But I asked him, and I'll ask you this now. At what point in your life in wrestling, your wrestling career, did a light bulb go off and you went, okay, now I really get this. This all makes sense. All the pieces of the puzzle have come together and I'm truly in the matrix. Like I can beat anybody at any time.
I don't know that I ever thought like that. And you know what, Pat, I'll give you this answer. I did write a book with a sports psychologist my senior year of college, and then kind of graduating going into the next year. We wrote a book. It wasn't very good, so I never published it. I didn't want to publish a shit book. But we sent a 10-question questionnaire to every NCAA champion in the past 50 years. So at that time I think it was 56 to 06. And one of the questions was very similar to that. When did you go from good to great? And that was the question. And I was looking for some kind of moment, a cathartic moment, kind of like you were asking, where there's, this happened and I realized I could beat anyone, or I was missing this technically or something. And what we got on that question it was probably the most prevalent answer of any question. The thing that was answered the same the most amount of times. It was, you're assuming I was great. I was never great. And just many, many, many variations of that. And so I thought about it. So obviously at this time I had won 2 NCAA titles and 2 Hodge trophies. And it's like by any definition of it, what I have accomplished in wrestling is great. But I also never thought of myself as great, right? I always just thought of myself as, hey, this is what I do. I'm a work in progress. I'm trying to get better. I've accomplished some pretty good things, but I still got farther to go. I mean, Pat, we're talking about guys as good as Mark Schultz. Oh, I was never great. John Smith was great. I never achieved it. Mark Chiarella, all like these guys who were like, by any definition you could come up with, they're as great gets. Wow. And
like Schultz, the Schultzes were like gods to everyone else growing up. You looked at those guys as gods, and I guess the best way, if I were to think about it in terms of fighting, for myself is like somebody asked me a question that related to that, and I said I only had to be the best like 4 times a year.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, but I mean, but would you really consider yourself the best at that time, or would you just consider yourself better than whoever you stepped in the cage with? I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's like, right. Obviously, like I say, I'm the best for promotion's sake. On a more day-to-day basis, all I really think about is like, okay, how do I not let Robbie Lawler hit me, take him down, and beat him up? I mean, that's like all I'm really thinking about. I'm not thinking about like, oh, if I do this, I'll be great, or if I just do this, I'll be a complete fighter. Like, I don't know. I guess I'm just not really. I'm not thinking in those terms. And if if I do enough of those things, obviously over time my accomplishments will pile up. And that was when I read all those my senior year of college, it was like I never thought of myself as great. But I guess if you were to put statistics down and make a definition, I would definitely fall in that category. So I guess I am great at this.
Well, it sounds like you have that kind of essential martial arts spirit. You know what I mean? To the lay person, you're a freaking animal and you're great, but you're of that, like, I'm a work in progress. I'm still learning. Like, that's very, very Bushido of you, my friend.
Yeah, the job is never done while you're doing it, right?
Yeah, and I think that's how and so obviously I coach a lot of kids, but obviously there's a lot of kids I don't coach, and I kind of see them from afar and see how they act and see how they talk and all that stuff. And what's that? I call it beginner's mind, but I think there's a lot of other ways for it. But, at some point, everyone hits it. And whenever they hit it, they stop getting better at that. Some kids, they win a state title, they think, oh, I'm the freaking man. I don't have to listen to anybody. I know what the hell I'm talking about, And some people, it's something smaller. Some people, they win a conference title, and they think they're the man, and they don't have to listen to anybody. And so when that happens, I feel like that's when kids really, they plateau. They stop getting better, and then maybe their decline even starts, or maybe not their decline, but they stay stagnant and other people get better, type of thing.
Hard head makes a soft ass. That's what I've always told.
And I think there needs to be that perpetual balance between the love of actually doing it and the hatred of losing.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, that combo seems to, that's certainly the two huge pieces of actually being successful at anything that you're doing when it comes to competing.
For sure. Well, I know we don't. I'm sorry. I know we don't have been for too much longer, but I do have two more questions I want to ask, and both of them. I mean, the sport, man, has just from Pat's days. I mean, the sport has obviously changed. You have this notion of the super fights now. William Morris buys it for $4 billion. Are these super fights just a way to kind of obviously just completely negate the rankings? But is this a way to pay for that $4 billion? I mean, you have now Anderson Silva, who's not even in the rankings, about to fight Israel. What is it, Adesanya, or I forget how to pronounce it. Adesanya. Like and if he wins, he gets a title shot. I mean, it's just
Anderson Silva gets a title shot.
That's what Dana says. If he beats Izzy, then he gets or Pat, like Pat was saying, Brock comes in after 2 years suspension.
Brock Lesnar against Cormier.
That's insane. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, man, I don't know. I lean both ways. I mean, obviously for me, I come from a wrestling background. It's like, hey, if you think you're the best in America, you show up at the national tournament. Everybody's in the bracket. If you win, you go to the Worlds, you're the best, and everyone shows up, and then you win or you lose, And so that's kind of the background that I come from. That being said, it's like Israel Adesanya and Anderson Silva. I mean, Anderson Silva's a legend. He hasn't had the greatest days, and but I think everyone's excited for it. And then, the Brock, I guess I'm just excited to see my buddy Daniel make some easy money. I don't know. I'm kind of in the middle.
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Ben, but the only reason, and I'll let you elaborate off of this, is, Brock Lesnar and Anderson Silva coming off positive tests and some other stuff that was going on. I mean, what message is being sent here?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't even think about it from that angle either.
Well, and then you have all the guys in the division, they're just being held hostage. Now those guys like Zachary Souza, my guy, now gets completely looked over in this division.
I think he could get another top matchup. The title fight is happening. I guess I don't like that Brock's going to fight for the title. That's pretty stupid. I don't mind it when they're slightly lower ranked, but yeah, when you're,
right.
A lot of guys, this is what they live for. They're working to get a shot at the belt, and that's kind of what they've been looking at and shooting for their entire life. And so now, like to your point, when you hold up the heavyweight division for how long? Because you want to give Brock a title shot.
Or the middleweights, when Bisping fought Henderson. I loved that fight. I love Hendo, but it was like, man, come on. It has to be, I think, a fine balance because the sport is changing. But, I just wanted to hear your thoughts on it. And something else, bro, that Pat, I'll be anxious to hear both of you guys kind of chat about this. You're not completely sold on chronic traumatic encephalopathy. It would qualify that when you say that you're not necessarily fully on board. I mean, you know it exists, but what causes it?
I would like to see more research. The one study that, I mean, obviously, so I'll just tell you guys straight up. I stopped sparring when I saw that damn movie in April of 2016. So for my last 3 fights, I didn't do any sparring.
Concussion, the movie, the Will Smith one. Yeah,
and I'll probably do minimal sparring for this one. I'll get a little in, obviously, and and that's not saying I did a lot of light sparring, right? For me, even wrestling, I think a lot of stuff is not necessarily. It's about timing, and so 1/2 is the same as 2/4, is the same as 4/8, is the same as 8/16, right? So you have to understand the timing of something. There's plenty of people who are really fast who can't hit a double leg. Right. And there's plenty of people who are pretty damn slow who can hit a double leg because they understand the timing of it. Same thing with punching. Yeah. But then I read that study, that the one study that made me want to say, come on, what's going on here? Is it said 99% of anyone who played in the NFL has CTE. And then I think it said 89% of anyone who ever played 1 year of football in their life. And so it's like, holy crap, any male, pretty much every male in America, it's got CTE. But there's plenty of highly functioning males. I mean, think about what percentage of male played some type of contact sport as a child. Right. Say men who are ages 50 to 70 right now. I mean, probably we're talking probably close to 100%.
That's a lot of people. Yeah.
I mean, 90% of them had CTE. Come on. I mean, so what I think, and I was again, I'm not a doctor, and so if you say I'm wrong, and you're a doctor, I'm going to kind of trust you. But I want to say they put the threshold really low. It's kind of like the BMI threshold, right? Anyone who has any muscle is certified as obese because the threshold is really low. So, obviously, I am taking proper precautions myself, but I would also, I'm curious to see what the research is going to show in the coming years.
It's interesting because I was recently out on the East Coast, and there's a group of Special Forces guys there on the East Coast. I just don't name groups or anything like that.
Yeah.
That I was hanging out with a little bit, and they took me into a facility with a lot of Eastern philosophy stuff, a lot of yoga, a lot of also computer programs, big screens where they could work on focus drills, and a lot of other stuff that worked with the neural pathways of how the brain works, and basically in talking to the person that runs that program for this Special Forces group, he explained that the NFL goes to them for all of their knowledge now because we know the severity, not having gone through it, but we know the severity of the repercussions of warfare on not only what these guys go through, what they see, what they experience, but also being blown up. I mean, there's massive explosions going off around them. These guys are blown up in vehicles, and so they're getting some pretty severe brain trauma. And so that's the thing where I got a really up close education on how this stuff works. And he started talking about different symptoms and stuff like that. And I went, this is interesting because there's a lot of the older guys who spend a lot of time and for me, Ben, I mean, me being the coach of the team, where I was spending, for at least a decade, I sparred every week to help guys get ready for fights. I mean, I was like Paul Newman in Slapshot. I was the playing coach. So there was definitely some unneeded abuse that I took over all those years. Now, can I function? I can stand there on TV and hold a microphone and bullshit with the best of them. But I can tell you that I'm not the same guy probably that I was, when I was 25. Is that age? It could be.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think there's a lot more research to be done in those fields. And like I said, for myself, I'm taking the proper precautions to be safe. But it is scary because it's also like we can't walk around in a bubble our whole lives.
Right.
And it's like, even before I started fighting in wrestling, you hit your head on their hip or you hit their head on their knee, or you shoot at the same time, you hit head to head, or you hit their head on the shoulder, and it's just like,
How many thousands of times did that happen to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's like, that's scary. Like even before I start fighting, I've hit my head how many times. And so I guess I would like to see more research done there. And, I obviously, like, I probably won't let my kid play football, but I don't really football that much anyways. Yeah, right. So who knows? But hey guys, I gotta
do your thing.
Yeah, hey, shout out your podcast real quick. I know you said you have a podcast, and where can we find you social networking and stuff?
It's the RUTHLESS Wrestling Podcast. We talk just about wrestling, so if you're not interested in wrestling, don't tune in. And then I'm on social. I'm only my name, and that's on both Facebook and Twitter and Instagram.
Perfect.
So I don't like Instagram. It's pretty low IQ, although I know a lot of kids are on there. I find Twitter to be the most fun because, there's interaction. You got to be smart. You got to be sharp. There's it was only 160 characters. I think it's slightly more than that now. So that's the one I would favor out of all of them.
Sweet. Well, thank you so very much for your time, brother.
Your time, buddy.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we're just saying thanks, man, and good luck with Robbie.
All right. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Take care, boss.
All right, take care, Ben. Thank you.
See ya.
Very, very cool, man. Ben Askren taking the time to make us the first on his media list, man. The fight was announced yesterday, and he comes by and hangs out with us first on the list. Pretty sweet, man. Ben Askren's a pretty cool cat.
Yeah, Everything Combat is growing quickly, and I think that maybe you have something you should mention about sponsors. We're growing quickly. Sponsors can jump on board quickly.
Sponsors always
get us before we're too expensive.
Yeah, always welcome, folks. I mean, as Pat said, this thing is growing exponentially, and the list of guests we have up is just absolutely monstrous. So you could send Pat or I a DM on Twitter. Pat is at PJ Militich on Twitter, and I'm at
Pat Militich.
At Pat Militich. I'm Jeffrey Wilson on Twitter, or I will leave my email. So any possible sponsorship, come let us know. Because like I said, this thing is growing exponentially. And like Pat said, jump on board before we just, can't afford it. Before we explode. But any final words, champ?
No, I'm just pumped. I'm down here in Dallas, Texas for some great fights tomorrow night on Access TV for the LFA. So we've got a couple bantamweight fights coming up. So it's going to be exciting. I'm pumped to call some fights, and I got next week in Minnesota, and then I get time off for the holidays.
Very cool. 'Tis the season, and I guess I could tease it a little bit. I don't want to mention any names, but if we do lock this guest in, it should be interesting. Him and Pat have an interesting past. Hopefully we can talk about it a little bit and some of his most recent excursions. But we'll just leave that right there. We'll just leave that right there. So stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. Appreciate you right here on Everything Combat, because as you know, life is a fight.